Hi all, thanks for coming tonight. We were very excited for this event for a good while. I think a good few of us might know each other through the Free Speech Ireland and the Free Speech campaign. Last year we ran a campaign to amend the hate speech bill to remove provisions pertaining to hateful speech. And through that campaign actually we were able to attract a lot of people from all different parts of the political spectrum. And we were quite proud of that, but kind of consequence, anyone that's maybe had the misfortune of being added to one of our group chats will know that you wake up now to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of text messages every morning from people from different parts of the political spectrum, debating and engaging with each other's ideas. And while that can be frustrating at times to unlock your phone and find 900 messages of people arguing and debating with each other, I think it kind of shows that there's an appetite there for spaces for people to engage and debate with each other's ideas. And that was kind of maybe the motivation for organising this tonight, to kind of give people the opportunity to engage with these ideas. Our first speaker tonight is one of the foremost commentators on Irish economics, Cormac Lucey.
Thanks, Dean, and good evening to everybody. So the topic tonight is Ireland at breaking point. And if we stand back before considering that question and look at the world we live in and compare it to 500 years ago, there's been huge technological progress, huge economic advance, huge changes in production, transport, IT. We've got social media, which I'll come back to in a minute. We've got globalisation. So 500 years ago, an individual could barely travel 100 miles in their life. Now you can travel several thousand miles inside 24 hours. And there's a big issue with social media, or anti-social media as one might call it, I find, and that is atomisation or individualisation of society. And we're all going around with our heads stuck in a phone, indifferent to the people right beside us. I was down in a hotel in Kerry 2 weekends ago, and at breakfast there were maybe 20 people there, including two couples, each of whom had two children, maybe between 3 and 6 years of age. And each of those 4 children had headphones on and they were watching a screen while they were having their breakfast. So if society keeps going in that direction, we're going to find it increasingly difficult to do things together as a society. We can already see a sharp divide opening up in political attitudes between young males and young females in the United States, in Britain, in Europe. We can see a decline in coupling. We can see a sharp decline in the birth rate. So these are all big problems that we're not talking about. If we look at the country that we live in, Ireland, our political apparatus has essentially been taken over by a social democratic monopoly. And whether they're wearing Sinn Féin labels or Fianna Fáil labels or Fine Gael labels, they essentially believe in low-key soft left economics, globalisation, anti-racism, feminism. And the reaction to the Netflix series Adolescence has essentially been a unanimous view that it's troubled males that we need to fix. Well, as a troubled male myself, I don't want to be fixed, and B, I think atomization is a huge problem that has got much deeper and more troubling causes. Giving up drink for Lent is a lot easier than giving up social media. So fixing that is going to be immensely difficult. A key point I want to make today is social democracy is structurally bankrupt. If you look at our national debt, it was 166 billion at the end of 2024. Unaccounted for are the pension liabilities that the state owes to contributors of PRSI and to retired public servants. That liability is estimated at 646 billion. So roughly 4 times the official stated liability. We can see in Britain today that the limits of the British social democratic state, where a Labour government is having to curtail welfare rates because the public finances don't allow it. We can see France has been meagre in its contributions to the Ukraine, to Ukraine in its war, because they can't afford it, mainly because they're spending so much on social spending. We, as a society, we're facing rotating complex crises with simple answers that are as often wrong as they are right. So the banking crisis was about bad individual bankers rather than about bad regulation from the top. COVID, we were told, it emerged in a market in China and we all need to lock down in response, whereas it now looks as if it emerged in a weapons laboratory in Wuhan, and that the country in Europe that had the lightest restrictions, Sweden, had the lowest excess death rate. Asylum seekers, we have just, without blinking, allowed a fundamental change in our society without any pushback, and any pushback that was attempted, you're accused of being racist. Russia's war on Ukraine, we're now being told maybe we could have a collection, we need some money to prop up our defences. But Russian GDP is 10% EU GDP. Even with Russia spending a far higher proportion of its national income on munitions, its military spending is still only 30% of EU military spending. But the Germans have just voted through a change in their constitution to allow greater debt, partly to fund greater military spending. Why? I'm not quite sure. In Ireland, tax receipts from the multinational sector have meant that the Irish government has not faced any significant resource constraints over the last 10 years. So I grew up in politics in the mid-1970s through the 1980s, and resource constraints were at they were the starting point of every debate. Now it doesn't exist in any meaningful way. And this has exposed ever greater inefficiency in our system. So housing is just a calamity of inefficiency. Health. Aoife Johnson died in Limerick Hospital in A&E on a Saturday night, where there was one doctor catering to 191 patients. My late father was a consultant doctor. Every second weekend he had to stay at home to be on call for the event that there would be some problem in the hospital that the doctors there couldn't handle, and he had to go in and handle it. So where were the medical consultants in Limerick when Aoife Johnson died? And where is the accountability? Like, we don't even know their names, never mind see them facing calls for their dismissal. Instead, we get bureaucratic nitpicking, NCT tests. Why do we need to have our cars tested? I can decide myself if my car needs to be scrapped. I don't need an annual test that I've got to pay for. I've got to run through hoops. I rent an apartment. I've just had to have something put on the windows to prevent the windows being fully opened in case a child decides to jump out the window. Well, what if I need to jump out the window myself if the apartment block is on fire? Like, it's all of this. I had a coffee with Michael McDougall last Saturday, and he had a meeting as a senator with two officials from the DPER, the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, going on about politicians' disclosure of their financial dealings. And he asked the question, what about civil servants' disclosure of their financial dealings? And they said, what do you mean? Civil servants have far greater power in our system, some of them do, than any member of the Oireachtas. So there's this kind of obliviousness to what's really going on with some of our politicians. So, and then we have another problem in Ireland, which is we have a national culture that we prefer to be people pleasers. He's very nice. Than efficient, ruthless achievers. which would be more a German thing. I lived a number of years in Germany, and I liked it about Germany, that people got on and did things rather than, well, I can't do that for you, but how can I be nice to you? I don't want somebody to be nice to me if they are woefully ineffective, and that's what we have in our political class. So is Ireland at breaking point? Well, I'm at breaking point, but I've been in that state since about 1978. Don't confuse a system that regularly makes unforgivable mistakes or an individual experiencing personal difficulties with the society at breaking point. If you look at our living standards, they're higher than they've ever been. If you look at our life expectancy, it's higher than it's ever been. According to international surveys, we're very happy. And we have, for all of its failures, we have a functioning democracy. But there are very grave potential crises right ahead of us. I'm pretty convinced there's going to be a recession within 3 to 6 months. Trump, we don't know what impact his tariffs are going to have on foreign direct investment in Ireland, but it's not going to be a good effect, we can be sure of that. Immigration. Is there an adult in the government room taking control of that issue and managing it? I don't see that. And I fear it's just going to get worse until we do an Irish thing, which is let a problem go beyond the boil and then have an absolute crisis that is difficult to manage, rather than manage things as they're brewing. Reunification. Data from Britain's Office for National Statistics indicates that in 2023, the British government spent £15 billion more in Northern Ireland than they took in tax revenues. So if we inherit the North, and I'm for national reunification, but if we get Northern Ireland, it's going to be a colossal financial burden. It's going to be a negative Apple judgment every year. And again, we're not addressing this at all. So what needs to be changed? We may need a crisis before we wake up, before voters wake up. I think that voters in Ireland vote for continuity or they vote for change. And at the last election, the change on offer was Sinn Féin, and people voted for continuity, bad and all, and palpably bad and all as it was. At the next election, I suspect they'll vote for change. And I think it would be very difficult. I would be to the right of the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil social democratic consensus. Let's say there were 10 TDs in a party right now representing that position. I think they would find it difficult to break through, given that there are maybe 60 or 70 left of centre opposition TDs who are the obvious alternative to the current government. So it may be 2 elections' time before people in this room, or people who think like people in this room, can actually mount a serious, potentially government-taking challenge. We need a politics centred on policies likely to work because they deploy incentives that will reward good behaviour and punish bad behaviour, rather than Simon Harris putting on his worried look, or politicians just talking to sound nice. We need incentives, and we do not focus on incentives at all. So key policies, I think we need a state that aims to do less, better. I think we need to reverse the assumption of globalist social democracy and focus instead on scepticism, value for money, incentives, efficiency. We need accountability. We need, and how do we get there from here? We need more meetings like this, so thank you for setting up this meeting. Maybe we need a website to publicly debate issues internally. If you look at America, Project 2025 clearly had a huge influence in making Trump 2.0 much more structured, it's a relative term, than Trump 1.0. Clearly they know what they're doing now whereas when he came in first time, he didn't know what he was doing. But that was somebody's done a lot of work in the background to get to that position. Reach out to like-minded political elements across the country. Look at funding, look at candidate workshops. But above all, any new movement is going to need candidates. There was an election 20 or 30 years ago, and after the election, the day after the count, Des O'Malley was talking to somebody, and he'd been re-elected in Limerick East. Also re-elected there was the Fianna Fáil TD, Willie O'D, and Des O'Malley was bemoaning the fact that a day after the general election count, Willie O'D is back out canvassing. And that is what our system demands. And it is a very heavy personal price to pay to be engaged in active political public debate. But that is the price people are going to have to pay. You don't have to start canvassing this evening when you leave this meeting, but probably starting sometime 15 months from now, and be doing it maybe 3 or 4 evenings a week, and getting into the local council, and getting from there hopefully onto a Dáil election ballot paper, and hopefully from there into the Dáil. Thank you.